We talked earlier in the show about the Trump administration addressing the use of Tylenol, especially the drug that makes up Tylenol, acetaminophen, and its association with autism in newborns for mothers who take that while they're pregnant, and also another drug, leucovorin, which has some apparent promising effects to help people. Right, who knows? But, as we talked about that, it just seemed so bizarre. We talked to Lois Collins earlier that the president was doing this and almost sounding medical. We thought it would be better if we got somebody that actually had some
medical background
letters after her name, and to tell us about the science and what's behind this, and what is the research behind all of this.
So we have with us Dr. Debbie Bilder. She's a Hopkins Presidential Endowed Chair in Autism Research and Professor in the Department of Psychiatry at the University of Utah. And Dr. Bilder, welcome to our show, first of all.
Oh, thank you so much for inviting me to join you too.
I want to start with a question that is less about the research and more about the families. I want to know, just right off the bat, what is a message you would like to share with families who are either scared or they're confused, or maybe they even feel guilty about this right now?
I'm so glad that you switched it right to what's really most important, which are these families and these affected individuals. Acetaminophen, or what most of us refer to as Tylenol, does not cause autism. There is no need for any type of regret or worry that, as a mom, you may have contributed to a condition your child has just because you took Tylenol, or as also called acetaminophen. It does not cause autism.
Thank you for sharing that. I mean, I'm a mom of children with disabilities, and as a mother, I do want to know if there's anything, that I can do to help, but the extra layer of guilt is just not helpful.
Holly, it truly is. And over the years, various different issues pop up that, suggest, a link to autism. And that's why it's so important for this type of information to come from our scientists and those who have looked very thoroughly at this question. So I'm glad that you're asking for clarification on this particular topic.
And what is the science behind this? I mean, what logic would there have been for the administration to make this statement?
Well, there are studies that suggest that there's a link between Tylenol. And there are studies that don't. And so that's why when you look at this particular question, you've really got to ask yourself, if someone found some link between moms taking Tylenol during pregnancy and their child having autism, you've really got to ask yourself, well, is it the Tylenol they took, or is it because there are reasons why people take Tylenol that are actually where this link is probably coming from? So pregnant moms use Tylenol when they experience pain or fever because it has been proven safe for decades for use in pregnancy, and there is no safer alternative to address these conditions, which aren't healthy in their own right. And we know that conditions that cause pain and fever are linked to autism, like infections and inflammation. And we know that pregnancy complications, such as low birth weight, prematurity, medical conditions that mothers may experience, like diabetes or high blood pressure, are also linked to autism. And so it's just important that people recognize Tylenol use does not occur in a vacuum. And if a study finds a link between Tylenol use and autism, it's because the investigators were unable to account for these other conditions that led to Tylenol's use to begin with, and that we know, do have a link to autism.
We talked a little bit earlier about correlation does not equal causation. I'm wondering if you can talk to us a little bit about how determining a cause for autism is complex. There's not a single answer, right?
There isn't. And even as I bring up these other issues that we know are linked, it's still not cause and effect. We don't have studies that prove that something, like this causes autism. And in fact, we know that autism runs in families. It has a clear familial predisposition, and there's a lot of genes that have been linked to autism. But when it really comes down to it, these are, large association studies. What their role is in science is to allow investigators like myself to recognize, gosh, there's some type of linkage. I'm not sure where the cause is, where the effect, or where they're just marching together related to another issue. And that's why scientists then go into much more in-depth investigations of potential relationships to understand potential for cause and effect. But this particular discussion, and I think the administration is referencing a recent review paper that came out that looked at various different studies, and they're using that to base this discussion recommendation on. And that review paper was not a new study. It was simply just looking at a lot of other studies, and the tools they use to review these various different studies are not what we would typically do in science when we're addressing this kind of question.
Dr. Bilder, historically, why and under what circumstances have doctors been suggesting Tylenol or acetaminophen over other pain medications such as aspirin and ibuprofen?
Because Tylenol has been proven to be safe in pregnancy, and there is no safer alternative. And so, many women will use Tylenol when pain occurs, when fever occurs during pregnancy to address those issues. Those issues themselves can have their own, potential negative effect. And so it's appropriate under the guidance of their doctor to use medicine that would be recommended like this. So I'm not surprised that someone's looked at this question. What's important, though, is that this question is looked at very systematically to account for all of these other issues that march along and could give the impression that there's some type of relationship when really that's not where the relationship truly is. It's the underlying condition for which it's being used.
So we know that there has been an increase in diagnoses with kids on the spectrum, the autism spectrum. We also know that there's a higher rate in the Rocky Mountain area than in some other places of the country. Can you talk to us just a little bit about an increase in diagnoses?
So I like the way you put that, Holly, because that's really what we've been measuring. We've been measuring the diagnoses that we've identified with autism, and there truly has been an increase in the likelihood that kids are recognized with autism, in a very large part with our understanding of the condition itself. There has been a lot of work done to improve our understanding, our awareness of autism among providers, among families, among teachers, so that when a child has, symptoms or indicators that they may have autism, these kids or these adults go to get evaluated. And so this is a measured increase. As far as the relationship, as far as the incidence here in Utah compared to other parts of the country, back in the late 2000s, we did have the highest measured rate, but other sites have really exceeded where we're at, and we're really pretty much in the middle of the other sites that are part of the network we are in to compare our rates with other locations in the U.S.
Dr. Bilder, we have about less than a minute left, but what can you tell our listeners about the promise or parent, if you're a parent of a child with autism, what can you tell them about this leucovorin?
Oh, it doesn't have FDA indication. There are some small studies that suggest it can be helpful, but it really is not ready for prime time. And I look forward to seeing just more systematic ways of investigating this to understand whether this really can make a difference for people affected by autism.
Thank you so much for joining us today. We've been speaking with Dr. Debbie Bilder. She's an autism researcher and professor in the Department of Psychiatry at the University of Utah.